Hi guys, I am Chantal from Growing Up Without Borders. Welcome to our channel if you are brand new. Today we're doing something really cool. I'm going to connect with a lady who is in Huckley Valley, which is in Ontario, Canada, and she has quite the story to share because her and her husband set off on what was supposed to be the dream vacation, 4 months of cruising around the world. So that was back on January 4th. She just made it home. Her trip was cut short by 2 months because of the coronavirus. And not just were they, they set off in the Everglades, and not just were they supposed to return to the Everglades, but they literally were stuck around the globe in Australia trying to get home. So without further ado, let's quickly connect with Jane and see what she has to say. But first, before you watch the video, if you want to come along with us on a tour around the world, make sure you subscribe, because as a general rule, we are traveling, making really cool videos for you to enjoy on Growing Up Without Borders. So let's see what Jane has to say. So Jane, nice to meet you. Thank you for taking the call and sharing with us and with our audience, because I'm sure you set off on the world's dream vacation and had no idea what was in store, right?
Right. It wasn't what we expected.
No. So tell me a little bit. So you left, the journey started on the Holland America back on January 4th. Is that right?
Well, we left here on January 1st and went down and stayed at the airport for the night, and then went down to Florida 2 days ahead of time.
Okay.
And and then we got on the ship on the 4th.
And your cruise was to go around the world, right? This was around the world.
Absolutely, yes. Leaving Fort Lauderdale, going around and coming back to Fort Lauderdale. Yeah.
That just seems like a dream vacation for anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds amazing. Was the average age of the travelers retirees, I guess?
Absolutely, because like the cruise was 4.5 months long.
Yeah.
And there's not many young people who can afford to leave their job and do that. But there were a few young families on. There was a couple with a 5-year-old daughter. There was a couple with a little boy about 10. There was a couple with some teenage girls and another couple with some teenage boys. So yeah, there were families, yeah.
Did you have the internet the whole time? Were you connected as you were cruising?
It was very intermittent. I bought a premium package, internet package, which meant that we were supposed to have unlimited internet. But in different spots of the world, the internet was available at different qualities. Let's put it that way.
Sure. And then how many people were on this particular ship?
There were 1,480 guests and 650 crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when was the very first, well, for you guys, I'm not sure if you felt like maybe a bit disconnected from what was happening in different countries, but when was the first knowledge of you realizing there's trouble in the world with this whole coronavirus?
We went down through the Caribbean and then through South America. And as we were going down the east coast of South America towards Antarctica, we started hearing more about this virus. Like before that, it had always just been this thing in China, right? But now we could hear that it was spreading. But we were in the southern hemisphere. We were going to Antarctica, and we knew, yeah, no problem. But when we got down to Antarctica, we were supposed to stop and meet some of the scientists at one of the research stations down there, but they turned us away, saying that they were afraid that we would contaminate them with the virus. And at that point we thought, oh, really? Yeah. So we spent about a week sailing around Antarctica, and then we sort of headed back up to Ushuaia, which is at the very bottom of South America. And then everything was fine there. And then we started going up the west coast of South America. And we were hearing more and more about ships being turned away.
So with this in February at this point, sometime in February?
Yeah, early February. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were hearing more and more about some ships being turned away. And we thought, oh, well, we should be okay. Again, because we thought, well, we're in, the southern hemisphere, and nothing seems to be, we seem to be doing fine. So then we headed off across the ocean, across the Pacific, towards Easter Island.
Yes.
And Easter Island was fabulous. We had a great day there. And then the next island after that was Pitcairn. And then after that, we were supposed to start heading into French Polynesia. But at this point, we were told that ships were being turned away because of the virus. But we thought, well, we don't have the virus on board. We're okay.
Yeah.
And
had people tested at this point, or anyone, like, was anyone sick actually on your ship?
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, well, people had, there was a couple of strokes, I'm sorry, right. and a heart attack and that sort of thing. But no, nobody had any respiratory problems, no.
Right. Yeah, this is the thing, when you go on a cruise with retirees, there's risks of, and there's always, challenges, just general health challenges. So at that point, you probably had no feeling like, why would they reject us? We're all okay. And then slowly it happened very gradually, but you were probably starting to feel, and was the people on the ship starting to feel this anxious feeling like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Or was everyone just happy?
So there was a lot of discussion, and people were saying, okay, people are being turned, we were supposed to go all through Polynesia, and then New Zealand, Australia, and then Indonesia, and Sri Lanka, and then over towards the Seychelles and Africa. And we were hearing about ships being turned away from those ports. So we thought, oh, okay, are we going to be able to continue? And then they started changing our itinerary. They started saying, okay, we cannot go to these Indonesian ports. They have all been closed. So we're going to spend more time in Australia. And then from Australia, since we can't go to some of the other ports we were supposed to go, they said, we'll go to Mumbai, and we'll stay in Mumbai for 3 days.
Wow.
And everybody went, Mumbai, that wasn't on the itinerary, not a place where anybody wanted to go, but they made it sound, okay, that's okay, we'll take you to the Taj Mahal. We thought, oh, okay, all right. But then we went to New Zealand, and that was lovely. And but when we were in New Zealand, we started hearing a lot of news about the virus was hitting New Zealand, and the virus was hitting Australia, and they were starting to turn ships away.
Now, was this March already? Were you into March at this point?
No, this was the end of February.
Wow.
Okay, I have a list here. What was the day we were in? Okay, we were in, you're right. Yeah, March the 2nd was Auckland, New Zealand. Okay, yeah, so it's just the beginning of March. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were hearing at that point that, yes, the virus was spreading very rapidly, and it had hit New Zealand, it had hit Australia, and they were very concerned, and they were closing the ports, and they were, limiting who could land. But nonetheless, we did our 2 ports in New Zealand, and then we headed off to Australia. We did Sydney. In Sydney, a lot of people were wearing masks. A lot of the stores were shutting down. A lot of the restaurants were, had signs up, and we were getting all kinds of notices about washing our hands and using the Purell and all this kind of stuff and keeping space. We thought, okay, this is not good.
Right. And were many people following the news on the ship, or was everyone at this point probably, right?
Absolutely, yes, because we all knew that it was going to impact us, and we were sort of taking bets on how far we would actually get.
Right.
Sydney was our halfway. Yeah, Sydney was our halfway.
Let's please make it to this country so we can visit it, right? But when did the realization? So when was the realization that, oh my gosh, this cruise is going to end early and we're going to be stuck on the other side of the world?
Well, we thought it was going to end in Sydney. Okay. Most people thought, okay, that seems like the logical place to end things. But no, they took us, and we kept on going. And we went through Townsville and Cairns, and then we were supposed to go up to Darwin. And we thought, oh, okay, well, Darwin would be a good place to end the cruise, because that's at the top, the north end of Australia. And from there, we could just zip across the ocean to the US, and we'd be done. Yeah. But no, we went up to Darwin, and we weren't allowed to pull into Darwin. So instead of at that point, deciding to end the cruise, they decided instead to head across the top of Australia and then down the west coast. And they booked us into 4 different ports along there, and we had excursions planned, and everything was hunky-dory. Hey, the cruise is still going. And then they told us that after we finished in Perth, we would be heading across the Indian Ocean to Africa. And everybody thought, oh, good, they found a way.
At this point, they're still telling you guys, oh, we're going to make it and continue. And they're probably scrambling in the background, trying to figure out how do we get you guys from here to here, and the logistics of it all, and changing daily, like things were changing on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
In countries, right? So they would be having to pivot this big ship in which direction, and then think, can we make it there on time before they close the port, right? They would have no control over it. Oh my God.
Exactly. That was what was happening. And we kept on getting messages from the captain or from the cruise director saying, ding, 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 ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and I have an announcement for you. We'd all go, and he'd say, okay, we're going to miss this port, and then we're going to do this one. And then half an hour later, there'd be another, ladies and gentlemen, there's been an amendment to that announcement. We're not going to be, doing that. We're going to be doing this instead. And so we knew that it was over. But then on the 13th, they made the final announcement that the cruise was over, basically. And what their intention was now is just to get us to a port where we could disembark and we could go home. And so we had all sort of felt that was coming. And there'd been a lot of, anxiety on board, and, some anger, a lot of disappointment.
And then the whole fact that not everybody's traveling with a laptop. So to be able to book your return flights, arrange all that. I mean, there must have been a lot of people trying and scrambling to figure that part out, right? Because tell me that process. And then from when you arrived at port, how long you had to be in the country without them shipping you off to quarantine. I mean, there had to be that process too, right?
Yes. Well, I think one of the reasons why we did not port, and they never told us why we never went to Darwin, but I think one of the reasons why we didn't was because we left Cairns on the 12th, and we weren't supposed to get to Fremantle till the 24th. That's 12 days. 12 days? Yeah. And so that would have been almost equal to the quarantine, right? So we, a quarantine of 14 days. And we had been in Australia only for, 2 weeks before that. So by keeping us, going around the coast of Australia, it sort of kept us within the quarantine. And so when they did make this final announcement, they said, we all expected that they would make all the arrangements and send us all home. But they came on, they said, okay, for the people who booked their first flight to the ship through Holland America, we will fly you home. For the people who made independent arrangements, you're on your own.
Oh my gosh. And there was like the what?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. There was a lot of people going, what? How do we do that? Like, there were a lot of very, very elderly people on board. Some of them with scooters and wheelchairs and dementia. I think, not everybody was like that. A lot of them were, we had scuba divers and skiers and everybody else, hikers. Yeah, a great variety. We had some very, very active people. We also had some very elderly and invalid people. And we were all very worried about what's going to happen to them. Some of them said they couldn't fly, or they hadn't flown in 20 years because they lived in Florida. They'd drive to the ship and they'd get off the ship in Florida and drive home. And they had no idea how to get home. So the first night after they announced that we had to find our own flights and stuff, the lineup at the service desk was incredible. The entire deck was just filled with people, and they were all, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And other people,
because on a normal cruise, there's always a lineup for the service desk, so add all this.
Yes, this was a crowd. And then there were other people who had their own tablets or their own computers, and they were all trying to get on the internet. But we were a day and a half away from our travel agents. So when it was noon for us, it was midnight for them. And so we had a little window between like about 9 and 11 where we were both awake. You know, it would be like 9 o'clock at p.m. our time and 9 o'clock a.m. in Canada.
Like right
And
now,
so,
for us, for example, it is 1:45 in the afternoon, and you are at
yeah,
almost 8:45 at night, right?
but we were 15 hours difference, I think, anyways.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and everybody was trying to get through during that little window. And so the internet broke down. The phone, well, there were 4 phone lines that we had access to, they broke down. And it was just awful. And a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, a lot of, as I said, anger. A lot of people also just took it with a sense of humor and said, you know, hey, that's just another adventure. Let's go. You know?
How did you handle it? Were you able to cope with everything, or did you have a couple meltdowns along the way?
I didn't have a real meltdown, but I did get stressed. I was stressed because my husband's not computer savvy in the least, and I'm sort of mediocre. So I was trying to rebook our flights, but myself. And I did manage to get a flight booked for the 24th, leaving on the 24th and getting home on the 25th. But then they announced that that was wrong, and we'd have to get off on the 21st and be off the ship by the 22nd. We had like 24 hours to get off the ship. And we were not allowed to stay in a hotel. There would be a $50,000 fine per person if we tried to stay in a hotel. We had to go directly from the ship with a bus to the airport, and we had to show our flight passes before we got on the bus to show that we had a flight out.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
yes, because they were shutting down the airport, they were shutting down the country, and we were not going to be allowed except for this one window that we had to get off the ship and get out.
So now you're stuck rescheduling the flights again, and was that hard
Yes.
to do? Or were you able
It was dreadful. Well, I kept on trying, but every time you'd type in all the information that you needed to type in, and then you'd push accept or whatever, you know, send, the internet would crash.
Oh my God.
Because everybody was doing the same thing at the same time. So eventually I stayed up one night, and I guess it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I finally got hold of a phone, and I was able to phone my travel agent. And it was, I think, 1 o'clock in the afternoon over here. And I phoned her and I said, look, this is the situation. Help. Please, can you get us out of here? And I gave her all the information from the flights that I had booked, and she was able to get a hold of, well, she tried to get through to Air Canada, and she said that she was online for about 4 hours, couldn't get anything booked through Air Canada. Finally, she went to a supplier or a broker, and she was able to get us a flight through them. And so we were able to get our flight changed to the 21st, and we arrived back in Canada on the 22nd.
So then you came off the ship, got on this bus, showed your pass, your boarding pass, or your proof of flight, got to the airport, and then when was the flight? How long did you have to wait at the airport?
Okay, we got to the airport about 5 p.m. and our flight left at 11.
Okay,
so
that's not as bad as I was thinking, because what would happen for those who can only find a flight, let's say, the following day? So are they sleeping at the airport?
Okay. Yeah, they were allowed to sleep on board, but they had to leave in the morning. They were given a number telling what group they were in and when they had to leave.
Okay, so they could stay on the ship until their flight.
Yes, we were in the first group to leave the ship, though. Mm-hmm. And we were told to be ready at 11 a.m. So at 11 a.m. we were standing there with our bags at the gate with our tickets ready to go. And we stood there till about 12:15, and then an announcement came on saying, I'm sorry, there's been a delay. It'll be in another hour. So, you know, we went and
you start being like this, because you're like, what if it turns into 2? What if it turns into 3?
Yeah, what if they decide not to let What if they decide not to let us off?
Exactly. Yeah, because at that point, everything changes so fast that you were probably just on edge, right? Just waiting for that dreadful announcement.
Yes. Well, while that was happening, there was another announcement. All the Qantas flights had been canceled. So everybody who had been booked on Qantas flights all of a sudden had no flight. So they all had to go back to the service desk and start booking again.
So
It was
this is now, you guys landed back home the 25th, so there's 5 days. Are there still people on that ship waiting to get flights?
no. They all had to be off by I think it was midnight on the 22nd. Okay. And I know that they did relax the no hotel thing after we left, because a couple of people have written and saying that they were able to stay in a hotel for one night until their plane left the next day. But the ship left on the 23rd. Wow. With no passengers.
Wow. Yeah. So has this traumatized you in any way where you feel like I will never cruise again, or?
No, we've already booked our next one.
You gotta be kidding me. That's hilarious. Oh. Also, that it wasn't so bad. I mean, you probably love cruising.
Yes, we do. We've always loved cruising. But our next cruise is going to be up in the Baltic and Norway and Sweden, that area. Yeah.
So when is your next cruise booked for?
July 2021.
Okay. So you have time for this whole coronavirus thing to settle down around the world. I often wonder, what is the future of cruise lines with the amount of money they're losing and everything. So
there's a lot of people who love cruising, and I think they will go back when they feel that things have settled down. Oh, yeah. I think they will.
I think so. Oh, yeah. Well, great. So if there's is there any word of advice for anyone that has, or any suggestions or anything that you want to share with our audience or the world for that matter? One message that you would want to get across?
Oh, I'm very concerned about the people who are still on. There's 2 more Holland America ships that are still out there, the Rotterdam and the Zaandam, and they are sister ships to the Amsterdam. And I'm very concerned about them because 4 people have already died, and they've got over 100 now, I think, who are infected and sick, and they're being turned away even from Florida, which is their home port, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so I just want people to, support those people who are still on those ships. Contact Holland America, contact the mayor of Fort Lauderdale, tell them to have some pity on these people.
I understand people's fear level, and I understand people saying, I don't want you coming in, but just take them and bring them direct to a hospital or a hotel that's in quarantine and just boom, just ship direct. Like what's, leaving everybody on a ship where there's so much infection happening around so fast, everyone in such close proximity to each other, and just the confinement of the small rooms that people are in. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And so just be aware of what's going on there. And the second thing is keep cruising, because it's a wonderful, wonderful holiday. And we've been cruising for, I guess, almost 30 years now. We've never had anything happen like this before, but it's been an adventure. We're very lucky that nobody on our ship was infected, and that we were able to get off and come home and tell the story. And I realized that we were very, very fortunate.
And I feel that now that you are back in Canada, are they taking it as serious as they should, the people in and around in Ontario for that matter?
Yes and no. I think on the news you see it, and yes, they are saying how serious it is. And if you listen to what's going on in the news, you can see how serious it is. But I still do see some people who go, So, take it seriously. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Jane, thank you so much for talking to us today and for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I will continue to follow your story as you continue your wonderful travels with your girls.
Thank you.